There is not a single Muslim in the national government. In 3 general elections, the BJP has not elected a single Muslim MP. In Uttar Pradesh, with nearly 20% Muslims, the party doesn't have a single Muslim member of the Legislative Assembly. And in Gujarat, it hasn't fielded a Muslim candidate in any Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha election since 1998. Clearly, the BJP doesn't believe in involving Muslims in government by giving them representation.
So for them, Muslims are not equal citizens. They are second-class subjects who live and labor on the whim and fancy of the Hindu overlords. What we are witnessing is in some ways even darker than what has happened in Pakistan. Because Pakistan, effectively at its creation, was a homeland for Muslims. Then it became an Islamic republic. So almost from its inception, Hindus and Sikhs were accustomed to being treated as second-class citizens. In India, Muslims and Christians thought they were first-class citizens, equal citizens, and it's the last 15 and 20 years to show that that is not the case. The BJP, the RSS, the other Sangh Parivar affiliates, and particularly the Hindutva strong troopers on the ground want to make it clear to Muslims that you are not equal citizens, you are there at our sufferance, and we will attack you, hit you, humiliate you, curse you. Sometimes I think India at this level is becoming a lawless republic. But a more accurate description would be, it is becoming a republic in which Hindus have rights and Muslims don't. It is not just a repudiation of our constitutional principles, Karan. It is a form of barbarism. You know, I will not draw parallels with other countries that have done this kind of thing in the past, but one could. It is a form of medieval barbarism that you are seeing enacted in many parts of India today.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Is India becoming a Hindu Pakistan? In an article that he's written today for the Calcutta paper, The Telegraph, my guest believes that whether you look at politics or institutions like the Judiciary and Election Commission, Bollywood or the way Muslims are treated, the answer seems to be yes. So today we ask, how far has this process gone? Who bears responsibility for it? And can it be reversed? Joining me from Bangalore is the well-known and highly regarded historian, author, and political commentator, Ramachandra Guha. Ram Guha, in the article you have written for the Calcutta paper, The Telegraph, this morning, you say, and I'm quoting, India in 2026 is as close to being a Hindu Pakistan as it has ever been. In politics and in the law, in symbol and in substance, in word and in deed, India is becoming ever more like Pakistan, except that here it is Hindus and not Muslims who rule over fellow citizens who are of other faiths. In a moment, I'll come to why you believe this is the case, but let me first clarify that this is not the country our constitution envisaged. Mahatma Gandhi and our founding fathers, I take it, would be horrified by this outcome. Am I right?
Absolutely. For them, for the main leaders of our freedom struggle, not just Gandhi, but people like Patel, Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose, Gokhale, Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay. India was a land open to people of all languages, faiths, dispositions. Our allegiance was to the Constitution, to the rule of law, to democracy, equality, and pluralism. And especially after partition, uh, the leaders of independent India, and here preeminently Nehru and Patel, because Gandhiji died a few months after independence, were absolutely committed to themselves to the ideal that whatever Pakistan might do, however harshly Pakistan might treat its Hindu, Sikh, and Christian minorities, India would give everyone of whatever religion equal rights. And that was the promise made to the non-Hindu citizens of India in speeches by people like Nehru and Patel, in the Constitution of India, and of course, going back 2 or 3 decades before that, in the entire ideals and character and manifesto of the Indian freedom struggle. So what we are becoming today is a substantial repudiation of what we as a republic hope to become, intended to become, aimed to become when we became independent in 1947 and when the Constitution was enacted in 1950.
You put it very forcefully. What we are becoming is a repudiation of what
Yes.
we intended and wanted to become.
Yes, absolutely. And what we are becoming, I don't mean, uh, you know, anyone personally, not you or not me or not your viewers individually, but as a society, as a nation, as a polity, in terms of how the law is administered, in terms of how our rulers behave, in terms of the hate speeches they give, in terms of the humiliation, harassment of Indian Muslims and sometimes Indian Christians too, on an almost everyday basis. So they are obviously, and we will talk about that. They are people who are trying to bravely resist this trend. It's not as if this creation of what I'm calling a Hindu Pakistan is universally accepted all across India, in every state of India, by all citizens, even in Hindutva-dominated states such as Uttar Pradesh. But that's a broad tendency which is now very visible, the creation of a majoritarian country and state.
Let's then come to the facts that suggest India is becoming a Hindu Pakistan. And I'll start first with politics. There is not a single Muslim in the national government. In 3 general elections, the BJP has not elected a single Muslim MP. In Uttar Pradesh, with nearly 20% Muslims, the party doesn't have a single Muslim member of the Legislative Assembly. And in Gujarat, it hasn't fielded a Muslim candidate in any Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha election since 1998. Clearly, the BJP doesn't believe in involving Muslims in government by giving them representation.
So for them, Muslims are not equal citizens. They are second-class subjects who live and labor on the whim and fancy of the Hindu overlords. Now, in electoral terms, Karan, something I don't mention in my article, but it's important for your viewers to recognize since a series of state elections are coming. In electoral terms, the BJP has sought to create a consolidated Hindu vote bank. Now, you'll see people like Modi and Shah, rail against the so-called vote bank politics of opposition parties. But they are the true practitioners of vote bank politics. They want to consolidate 80% of Hindus to hate the 20% of Hindus who are not, 20% of Indians who are not Hindus, who are particularly Muslims and Christians. And if they are able to get 60% of 80%, that gives them 48% of the vote, which is a winning formula in many states of the Republic, particularly in the northern and the western states. So that is a kind of cynical, instrumental, amoral, hateful politics that is practiced at the level of campaigning for and winning elections. And it may take also darker forms, for example, in the removal of Muslim names from the electoral list, or even when those names exist, as was clear in the Lok Sabha elections in some constituencies in UP in 2024, Muslims are not allowed to vote by the local administration. So this is a kind of systematic policy at humiliating and disenfranchising Muslims so that they are no longer citizens, they are subjects.
The sad truth is that even at the state level, Muslim representation is pretty close to ceasing. In its 28 states, India doesn't have a single Muslim chief minister. In 17 of them, there isn't even a single Muslim minister. Doesn't it look as if this is increasingly becoming the norm?
Very much so. And I would add to that, Karan, if I may, representation in positions of power and authority is very important. It's very important for a minority, Muslims in Uttar Pradesh, Christians in Kerala, to be represented in government, in the state government, as MPs, MLAs, and ministers. But this representation is also very important in non-elected public institutions, in the civil service, in the diplomatic corps, in the armed forces, in the judiciary. Now, I say in my article that within living memory, we've had foreign secretaries who are Muslim, chief justices who are Muslim, directors of the intelligence bureau who are Muslims. You will recall when we, in our war with Pakistan in 1971, it was the Air Force chief was a remarkable Muslim, I.S. Latif. Now, so you Muslim, and this was common, and these people were there because they were good, they were able. Now there's a systematic exclusion of good and able Muslims from positions of power and responsibility, not just in government, but in the administration and in the armed forces. That is what is and that is very much like what Pakistan and Bangladesh have done. Eliminated Hindus, from positions of power, authority, and responsibility to the extent possible. That is why we are, for all our governments' professed hatred and bile against Pakistan, they are imitating the worst features of Pakistani society and politics.
Now, the truth is, Ram Guha, it's not just the cold, hard facts, but also the symbolism that suggests Hindu majoritarianism. The Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, India's most populous state, only wears saffron robes. The Prime Minister of what is constitutionally a secular country presides over the inauguration of Ram temples. Chief Justices and Army Chiefs have started visiting temples and make a public display of it. Aren't these people, all of them, flaunting their Hindu identity?
Very much so. And the Prime Minister, the Chief Minister are doing it out of belief. The Army Generals and the Chief Justices are doing it partly out of belief, but partly because this is what they want the bosses in politics to know, that they are accomplices in this game of the construction of a Hindu majoritarian society and polity. And this is, of course, antithetical to our constitutional ideals. I mean, this is a clear kind of proclamation that even if we are not a Hindu Rashtra in law, we are becoming one in spirit. But it's also a kind of in-your-face insult to those Indians who believed in the secular ideals of the Republic, who believed that even though they were a minority, a religious minority, a linguistic minority, the Constitution guaranteed them equal rights. So it is deeply disturbing, I would even say frightening and alarming for someone who knows what a democratic and plural India was supposed to be like.
The sad part is that even India's once highly regarded institutions seem to have turned a blind eye to Hindu majoritarianism. When the Prime Minister in 2024 during the general election, or when today the Home Minister and the Chief Minister of Assam make speeches demonizing Muslims, neither the judiciary nor the Election Commission step in to take action or to stop them, whilst the media plays up these speeches in the hope that it will garner bigger and bigger audiences.
Yes. I mean, it is like, what we are witnessing is in some ways even darker than what has happened in Pakistan. Because Pakistan, effectively at its creation, was a homeland for Muslims. Then it became an Islamic republic. So almost from its inception, Hindus and Sikhs were accustomed to being treated as second-class citizens. In India, Muslims and Christians thought they were first-class citizens, equal citizens. And it's the last 15 and 20 years to show that that is not the case. The BJP, the RSS, the other Sangh Parivar affiliates, and particularly the Hindutva stormtroopers on the ground want to make it clear to Muslims that you are not equal citizens, you are there at our sufferance, and we will attack you, hit you, humiliate you, curse you, and even look current at the collapse of the law. I mean, you mentioned the Chief Justice, and of course, recently retired Chief Justice, went in saffron robes to a temple. Then he invited his Prime Minister home for a religious Hindu religious puja that was telecast and broadcast. But if you look at lower courts and if you look at the police, so it's state after state in northern and western India, in UP, in Madhya Pradesh, in Uttarakhand, in Rajasthan, when the BJP is in power, Muslims are attacked. Their houses are vandalized. Sometimes they are killed. And a family member goes to file a PIR against the perpetrators, who are usually, as I said, Hindutva stormtroopers. And instead, the Muslim victim, a FIR is filed against him or her, and often they are put in jail. So it is a complete, in this sense, sometimes I think India at this level is becoming a lawless republic. But a more accurate description would be it is becoming a republic in which Hindus have rights and Muslims don't. If you look at this everyday treatment, there's violence against a citizen. And that citizen has the right to seek redress through the law. And what happens? The law turns against him and rewards his perpetrator. This is hundreds of such examples are there, particularly in the northern and western states of India. So it is not just a repudiation of our constitutional principles, Karan. It is a form of barbarism. I will not draw parallels with other countries that have done this kind of thing in the past, but one could. It is a form of medieval barbarism that you are seeing enacted in many parts of India today.
Finally, perhaps the most telling fact, and you mentioned this very pointedly in your Telegraph article, is the change that's taking place in Bollywood.
Yes.
Right, and I'm quoting you, Hindutva has also penetrated popular culture, with Bollywood, once a bastion of secularism, now increasingly prone to showcase films that portray non-Hindus in a poor light. Isn't that the saddest blow of all, when popular culture becomes majoritarian?
Yes, of course, it is. And because, Bollywood was a space. In fact, there's a wonderful statement of Javed Akhtar, which goes back about 25 years. He was giving an interview to Nasreen Munni Kabir, the well-known documentary filmmaker and film historian. And in that he said something like this, I'm quoting from memory. India has 28 states. Bollywood is the 29th state in which all the most attractive and vibrant features of the culture of the other 28 states is exhibited and articulated. So it was the shining example of Indian pluralism, linguistic, religious, cultural, ethnic, and so on. And it has now become a vehicle effectively for the BJP. I mean, people have paid a lot of attention, Karan, in recent weeks to how the Board of Control for Cricket in India has become a vehicle of the BJP. Now, cricket and film are India's two greatest popular passions. But equal attention should be paid to how Bollywood is becoming a vehicle of the BJP and the dark and insidious role of the censor board headed by BJP appointees and BJP apologists in all of this. And of producers, of funders, of those which films are allowed to be screened, which are not allowed to be screened.
There's one more fact that suggests we're becoming a Hindu majoritarian country, and it's an example that permeates virtually our everyday life. It's the way Muslims are treated and spoken of. They're accused of love jihad and cattle stealing.
Yes.
Ministers like Chief Ministers Yogi Adityanath taunt them as Abba Jan, and they're repeatedly told by BJP people, go to Pakistan. Last year at Christmas, India's Christians were harassed, their celebrations forcibly broken up by Hindu bigots, and now in Orissa, pastors are forced to eat cow dung. This would have been unimaginable even 20 or 30 years ago, and yet it's become normal today. It's certainly not what our founding fathers would have wanted.
And it would have happened, some of this would have happened between 1998 and 2004, when the BJP was first in power at the center. So, you remember Graham Staines and so on. But at least there would be some shame, some embarrassment on the part of BJP chief ministers and prime ministers when such incidents occurred. Now, not only there is no shame, there is exaltation. There's a sense of triumphalism. There's a kind of vicarious and gory celebration of such acts by Hindutva forces. So, which is why I say, I didn't say it in my article, but now I should say it out front. It is a form of modern contemporary barbarism.
You said that 2, 3 times. It's a
Yes,
very
that's,
strong point.
when I
you're
think
making.
about it, when I think about every day the kinds of things that are happening. As I said very early on in our conversation, Karan, this is not universal. This is not true of all of India. This may not even be true of the majority of Indians, but it is true of those who rule us, who have control of the state apparatus, of the judiciary, of the armed forces, of the media. It's true of them that they are those who are in power today are propelling Indian society and Indian polity in this barbaric mode. So I said it. There are people resisting it. Just think of a few days ago and the extraordinary example of Deepak Kumar in Kotdwar, who so nobly and heroically stood up for his Muslim shopkeeper friend who was being harassed by Hindutva goons. So there are examples like that. We should take nourishment in. We should broadcast. We should ourselves follow in our own lives. But the broader trend is quite visible and extremely depressing.
At this point, Ram Guha, let's ask, how did we get to this low point? Who is responsible? You say whilst Nehru strove to keep religion out of politics, the Hindu right was given the opportunity to grow and expand through the eras of the post-Nehru Congress. And you say Rajiv Gandhi was particularly culpable. What did he do that set India on the path of majoritarianism?
So, Karan, before I come to Rajiv Gandhi, as a historian, I believe in multi-causal explanations. So, as I say also in the article, all that is happening now did not start in 2014. There's a deeper history of Hindutva that goes back to the missionary societies of the 19th century, then the Hindu Mahasabha, and the RSS. So, steadily, painstakingly, Hindutva forces were working to consolidate on the ground, even when someone like Nehru was prime minister. But they were given the opportunity to expand and grow by the crimes of the post-Nehru Congress, I would say the post-Shastri Congress. Some of the compromises that Indira Gandhi made, for example, but more starkly and more consequentially by the errors committed by Rajiv Gandhi, particularly the overturning of the Shah Banu judgment, which could have led to a uniform civil code for all. It could have led to the emancipation of Muslim women. It could have led to the spread of progressive ideas all around. And that followed by the opening of the locks to this tiny, obscure, unused shrine in Ayodhya. Now, you can make excuses for Rajiv Gandhi. He was a novice in politics. He was an airline pilot and probably a fairly competent one, who had come into politics against his will because mummy said you must join, you must come. Now that Sanjay has died, mummy said you must become an MP, and then mummy had kind of anointed him as a successor, even though he had no experience. But inexperience cannot excuse this. There is a tendency among some Rajiv Gandhi friends and acolytes to blame the advisors. And I have no doubt that those very people will now start defending Rajiv Gandhi and say, no, it was the fault of Arun Nehru. No, it was the fault of M.J. Akbar. No, it was the fault of Z.A. Ansari. But he was prime minister. He is responsible for those acts. And those two acts really sowed the seeds for much of what is happening. The other things he did, which I don't mention in my article because of space, let us not forget that Rajiv Gandhi banned the satanic verses before the Ayatollahs of Iran did so. Now, these acts of Muslim appeasement, and they were that, only play into the hands of Hindu fundamentalists because Hindus are four times, the population, much better funded, much better organized. So whenever this kind of I'll appease you, then I'll appease you kind of politics happens, which is what Rajiv Gandhi did, the real beneficiaries had to be the Hindu right because of the asymmetry in populations, in resources, in finances, and in organizational ability. So I think this kind of notion that he had bad advisors, he was prime minister, and let's be clear, the buck stopped with him, and he led us down a path which we are still reeling from.
You make that point in your article for the Telegraph very forcefully, that once you start on the road of appeasing fundamentalists, you will always play into the hands of the Hindu extremists because they are asymmetrically the majority in the country.
And also asymmetrically the majority in a demographic sense, but even more asymmetrically dominant in terms of finances and organizational resources.
Absolutely. Now, whilst the majoritarian instincts of the first BJP Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee were constrained by his coalition partners, Narendra Modi and Narendra Modi's right-hand man Amit Shah, the Home Minister, are not just far more committed ideologically, they're also far more unchecked. Am I right in saying that these two have taken Hindu majoritarianism to its present apogee?
Very much so. And these two have given the direction, the orchestration, the ideological, political, institutional heft. And they are absolutely committed to it. You remember the line of W.B. Yeats, the best lack all conviction and the worst are full of passionate intensity. So this is a striking illustration of this. They are full of passionate intensity. They are totally committed, and they are also very skilled, very able political operators and manipulators in a Machiavellian cause. But one should not dismiss them casually, as some people do, as demagogues. They are much more than that. They are fully and wholly committed to the creation of a Hindu Rashtra in which Muslims and Christians are humiliated and subjected, and they will use whatever means possible to bring that about.
Let me at this point, Ram Guha, put to you the argument of the Hindu right. It claims that this is not Hindu majoritarianism. They insist on calling it civilizational renaissance. You strongly disagree. Can you explain why?
Yes. So, we are an ancient civilization. We've, over the millennia, not just the centuries, Hindus. Of course, there's also the element of a composite culture where Muslims and Christians and Sikhs have also created this palimpsest called Indian civilization. But if you look at only at the achievements before the Muslims came to India, there was great art, great architecture, great philosophy, music, craft traditions. Has the BJP done anything to revive this? Not at all, because they're also incapable, because they are not just bigots, but they're also Philistines. The teaching of Sanskrit has so declined so fast that the best teachers of Sanskrit are in Europe and North America, not here. If you look at the utterly gross modern buildings that our Prime Minister has built, if you look at whatever that Bharat Mandap, it is so awful and vulgar. Who would think that this is the land of Belur and Halibid and, Golconda and, the Jain basadis of Mudbidri and so on and so forth. If you look at philosophy, actually there was a much more vibrant tradition of Hindu, Jain and Buddhist philosophy, 30, 40, 50 years ago than there is now. So I think this is, they have no understanding of the richness and sophistication of Indian culture and no desire at all to even understand it or to revive and renew it. They have a simple, they're animated by a simple objective, which is that of a gunda or a bully. Let us show Muslims their place. That is their animating objective. It is not at all a civilizational. Or if you look, for example, at what has happened to our IITs and our institutes of science, at least those were crucibles of creativity, of scholarship, of research today, and I have it on good authority that you cannot be appointed a director of the IIT unless the Sangh Parivar okays you. That's not how you. And IITs now have gaushalas on campus. They publish all kinds of bizarre calendars claiming Hindus invented everything. Science progresses through open-mindedness, through innovation, through creativity, not a kind of blind adulation of what happened 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. So they're a bunch of narrow-minded and bigoted Philistines. There's all this talk of civilizational renaissance is a camouflage for what they are actually doing. Look at the state of our universities, look at our research institutes, look at our state, as I said, of our contemporary aesthetic, of our public government aesthetic. Even the if you see, I mean, in a smaller way, I have a particular interest in this because of my work on Gandhi. The Gandhian sites had an austerity and a beauty. They were beautiful because they were simple and austere. And now there are all kinds of garish and ugly multimedia displays in places associated with Gandhi. They have no understanding of the high achievements of Indian culture at all.
You made a very important point a moment ago when you said they are motivated by a desire to show Muslims their place. That's not just rank prejudice, but it's also a mistaken revenge for history.
Of course, and absolutely. And I mean, what would a Muslim shopkeeper in the Uttarakhand town of Kotwar today in 2026 have to do with Aurangzeb may or may not have done 350 years ago? So it is like, but it's more than that. It is not just a revenge for history. It's part of a kind of narrow-minded, bigoted worldview that we have to say, and it also shows a deep insecurity. I've coined this phrase to describe Hindutva, Karan. It's a species of paranoid triumphalism. So you're paranoid. You're always looking for enemies who are destroying the nation from within. They are Ghuspaitias, they are termites. And yet it's triumphalism. Hindus will triumph. Hindus are destined to be Vishwaguru. Now it's really something that is taking us back from all that we have patiently achieved as a democracy and a society since the constitution was adopted in 1950.
Tell me, Ram Guha.
And it's bringing us ever closer to Pakistan, which was for us or in the past an example of what India should not become.
Tell me, can the bulldozer of Hindu majoritarianism be reversed? Can we regain the secular, non-denominational state India was meant to be? What do countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Iran tell us? They were, or have been, or are still majoritarian states, fundamentalist states. Can you reverse them?
I will reverse the order of questions. I'll say the first question you ask is, can Indians and Hindus in particular push back against this majoritarian trend? And can Indians and Hindus in particular find a way of renewing the democratic and plural foundations of our republic? Now, that question I cannot answer. I'm not a soothsayer, I'm not a prophet, I'm not an astrologer. I'm merely a scholar. But as a scholar, I can point to what is happening around us. In my article, in many ways, Pakistan was a state destined to fail. Even if it had not, and this is a slightly long answer, so please be patient with me. Even if it had not constituted itself as an Islamic state, Pakistan was a kind of state destined to fail because it was heavily dominated by the military. Because unlike in other parts of India, it had not had land reforms. The Muslim League was a party of talukdars and aristocrats, whereas the Congress was a party of peasants and workers. So Congress under Nehru and Patel was able to create a much more egalitarian social structure, whereas Pakistan, because of its deep economic inequalities from the beginning, had problems. It still doesn't have a viable middle class. But, and of course, it was made much worse by Zia and his Wahhabism. But if you look at two countries I mentioned in my article as cautionary tales, Sri Lanka and Iran. Iran was a vibrant society. Women were emancipated, they were educated. It had high levels of education. It had good scientific institutions. It had a vibrant music, art. It had, to go with all that, it had natural resources. It had oil alongside an educated and emancipated population, which the other Middle Eastern countries don't. And they could have become, like South Korea or Vietnam or Thailand or Taiwan is today, had it not been first for the authoritarianism of the Shahs, and next and much more consequentially for the majoritarianism and hate-filled politics of the Ayatollahs. So Iran completely lost its way because it was identified itself as a Shia state first and foremost. Look at Sri Lanka, which is even closer to us. Sri Lanka had fantastic human development indicators: education, health, gender equality, sanitation, much higher than India. It also had, apart from all of this, apart from this robust human development, it had, these gorgeous temples and monasteries and wildlife sanctuaries and beaches. Tourism could have been a real, driver of the economy. And then it plunged itself into civil war because it started as a secular republic, and then the Buddhist majoritarians decided that it had to be a Buddhist country, and Tamils who are not Buddhist, largely Hindu and some Christian and Muslim, had to be humiliated and subjugated in the same way as Hindutva today wants to humiliate and subjugate Muslims and Christians. And look at what happened to Sri Lanka. I mean, I say in my article, and I've been to Sri Lanka many times, I've studied this history, and I've not been to Iran, though I've also studied this history, but these two countries were set on the road to peace and prosperity had it not been for religious majoritarianism. Now, if you see what has happened in Sunni Pakistan, if you see what has happened in Shia Iran, if you see what has happened in Buddhist Sri Lanka and Buddhist Myanmar, if you see what is happening today in Jewish Israel, when majoritarian politics, when the presumed interests of the majority religion become what determines law, economic policy, institutions, education, everyday life, that never leads to all-round progress for that nation. Why should India at all be an exception? That's what I ask my fellow Indians and my fellow Hindus to consider. For them to consider the consequences of what this majoritarian road, kind of taken so much more forward by Modi and Shah, what kind of past it has brought us to, and what kind of future it might or might not give our children and our grandchildren.
You're suggesting that there's no walking back on this road once you start
I can't say
to
that.
carry
I
on.
cannot say that. As a historian, things change. I know as a historian, you are that unexpected things can happen. Karan, Hitler wanted to build a 1,000-year Reich. He was in power for 12 years. You are speaking to me from New Delhi. The British effectively shifted their capital there in 1929. And they were gone in 18 years. But when they built this grand capital, where you live and where I've studied and also lived, they didn't think it would disappear so fast. So I cannot say what will happen. That I cannot comment on. The future may be darker than I have portrayed it. There may be unexpected emancipatory and liberatory possibilities. So there may be light at the end of it. I cannot say all that. I am not a soothsayer. I'm not a prophet. I'm a scholar who would like to bring the attention of my fellow citizens and my fellow Hindus in particular to the consequences in the present and possibly the future of the path that Modi and Shah and their government and their regime are for taking for us.
In that case, let me end by asking, how far has this Hindu majoritarian attitude infiltrated into the minds of ordinary Indians? In other words, how far has it spread through the length and breadth of our country?
So it has spread quite far, and it clearly has spread farther in the north and the west than in the south and the northeast. At the level of everyday life, that is very clear from, Muslims are safer in Bangalore than they are in parts of Uttar Pradesh. They are even safer in parts of Tamil Nadu than they are in Bangalore. By safer, I mean freer to safely practice their professions, go to school, go to college, and socialize with whom they want and so on. So India is a large country. There are areas in which this majoritarianism has not penetrated so deeply, but there are large parts of India where it has become normalized. And of course, it's amplified on social media and by the IT cell of the BJP and newspapers and TV channels associated with the ruling regime, which are instructed and sometimes ordered to spew this kind of hate-filled propaganda in the guise of news. So there are still fairly large spaces where still a distinct minority, but 20-25% of India is not insubstantial. So I sometimes say, Karan, as an Indian Democrat, as an Indian pluralist, as a biographer of Mahatma Gandhi, if you ask me how do I feel of India today, I would say I'm depressed but not despairing.
Okay. I think that is a good point at which to end this discussion. I thank you for having opened the eyes of the audience to this great looming danger that we are on the road to becoming a Hindu Pakistan. It's one that will, I think, shake many people up, but it's a truth that they have to open their eyes and recognize. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Karan.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.